Okay, so this is obviously the most exciting part of your day is you get to look at me inside a custodial closet. So for many of you, this is probably typical of what you have. You have kind of a really small cramped area that they shoved somehow an old mop sink into, and that's what you use. But what do we know and what can we learn about this particular custodial closet? First thing, you'll notice here, which is great, all of these shelves have little paper marks on them to say what's being stored where. That's excellent. Storage and knowing where it is and what's there is great to have. What I would suggest though, if you have this setup, is to consider wire rack shelving, at least for your chemical storage. That way it doesn't have a chance to spill and then sit on the wood thing, damage the wood, and just sit there. And it's also better for airflow, things like that. If you do that, store your paper goods higher than your chemicals. So if your chemicals spill, you don't ruin your paper goods. Okay, this particular organization that we're at is still using the bane of my existence. If you know me and you know Custodial, I do not like string mops unless I'm picking up large debris, big water spills, or stripping and waxing floors. My preference is microfiber mops, which they do also use here as well. This is a flat mop. It just sticks on the holder and it goes. You pre-saturate these. They clean about 150 square feet to 300 square feet, depending on the size and type. Once you clean that, you put them in the dirty pile, and then you just launder them each night or each day. The problem with string mops is that once you start using them, they're dirty. You can take a brand new mop head, sanitized mop handle, sanitized mop bucket, which I'm telling you right now, none of you sanitize your mop buckets consistently or your mop heads and handles. That's not fussing at, well, I am fussing at you, but that's just reality. But once you dip all that sanitized stuff in that bucket and you mop for the first time, from that point forward, you no longer are mopping with clean solution. You are simply diluting the dirt and debris on the floor and spreading it out in a much thinner layer. So it is more clean, but it's still not clean. Whereas a microfiber mop, as it goes on, it pulls the debris into the mop head and holds it. That's why it only does about 150, 300 square feet. And that's why you swap them out for new ones. And by the way, 30, 40 of these pre-saturated in a bucket is lighter than one bucket of mop solution. When you think of ergonomics, remember a gallon of water is about 8 pounds. That's a lot, and consider picking that bucket up, dumping it, and refilling it multiple times as you should when you're mopping. That's why we want to go to microfiber. The other things we point out, and I like to see, is this is a fill station, and you'll notice here it's got concentrated chemicals down here that has pretty color tubes coming up. And then it's got the different cleaners, the glass cleaner, the hard surface sanitizer, heavy duty non-acid washroom, and a neutral floor cleaner. This is your main 4 needs within your facility for custodial work. Obviously in a restroom, non-acid kills everything, that's good to go. Neutral floor cleaner, it helps maintain your finishes. Glass surface multi-cleaner, now this one is somewhat, you might get away if you have a sanitizer that is hydrogen peroxide based, for example. You can use that instead of the glass multi-surface cleaner, but hard surface sanitizer, remember, for those of you who have been in any of my training sessions, a sanitizer is FDA approved because it's for food contact surfaces. A disinfectant, like this restroom cleaner is regulated by the EPA because it's a pesticide and it actually kills live organisms. You have to have a secondary rinse if you use a disinfectant on a food contact surface like a table or eating bar or something like that. But this is great. This is a green solution right here because the concentrated chemicals are cheaper to ship, less water to maintain because you mix the water on site. It uses less water and it's diluted properly because all of these have to be diluted at a certain percentage to be able to work as designed. You'll also notice that they have the SDS sheets for these chemicals right here. That is very important. These are required. It's part of your hazardous communication, which will be another section in our training program. But they have them right here. They are storing their mop handles correctly. They are here vertical. They drain into the sink right there. That is good to go. They do have a ladder here, and it is stored out of the way. It is nice. The only thing I would like to see is maybe a clip on there, but you'll even notice it says ladder right there. So everything has a place, and it's labeled short extension cord, long extension cord, so on and so forth. Now, one issue we have, potential issue that we have, is you'll notice a lot of you use these spray bottles when you make spray solution. It's what it's designed for. You fill it up. What you'll notice is this does not have a label. One of the biggest things that we see on all of our facility condition assessments is what I label as improperly labeled secondary chemical containers. The reality is your HAZCOM program will tell you that you need to label a secondary chemical container, and that's any container that you put from its original container into a second one. That's a secondary. You have to label it with the required information so anybody using it knows what it is, knows what its number is, and knows can tell, like poison control, what they're using, so if there's an accident. This is a common secondary chemical container. Just so you know, this is actually a secondary chemical container. So when you put mopping solution in there, you should note what that is. If you have an auto scrubber, when you fill it, that's now a secondary chemical container. You can get the laminated cards, labels from your chemical manufacturer. I laminate them and put them on a ring, and I could clip it to my equipment. The only time that you do not have to have a label, a secondary chemical container label, is if you maintain visual contact with the chemical from the moment you take it from its original container until you dispose of it properly. That's not likely. Therefore, get in the habit of properly labeling your items.